podcast linking with chains of reason that affects our daily lives in society and culture, including, but not limited to, sports and politics.
Welcome to the new and improved Chains of Reason podcast, formerly the Grand Designs podcast. I'm a co-host, DJ Grand. I'm here as always with my brother Jerry.
Hello.
As well as our producer, Ryan Trainer.
Hello.
Today we're going to be tackling Antifa, fascism, and the KKK, and hopefully we can get our minds around it. First of all, we need to start by some definitions. I want everyone to think of politics as a linear graph, a line, if you will. On the left of that line is total government, 100% control. On the right side of that line is total freedom. Socialism, communism, fascism, they're on the left side of that line, closest to total government. In fact, I would put communism slightly to the left of fascism. Yes, it is right, but is not right-winged. In fact, German fascism is short for National Socialism. That means it is socialistic, which means they are for the state. So we need to get into some definition of what exactly fascism means. And this is taken from an article, albeit from the 1960s, but it was from the Los Angeles Times. And even though it was from the 60s, it is totally appropriate for today. The difference between socialism and fascism is superficial and purely formal, but is significant philosophically and psychologically. It brings the authoritarian nature of a planned economy crudely into the open. The main characteristic of socialism and of communism is public ownership and of the means of production, and therefore the abolition of private property. The right to property is a right of use and disposal. Under fascism, men retain the semblance or pretense of private property, but the government holds total power over its use and disposal. The dictionary definition of fascism is, quote, a governmental system with strong centralized power, permitting no opposition or criticism, controlling all affairs of the nation, industrial, commercial, etc., emphasizing an aggressive nationalism, end quote. And that is from the American College Dictionary. Under fascism, citizens retain the responsibilities of owning property without the freedom to act and without any of the advantages of ownership. Under socialism, government officials acquire all the advantages of ownership without any of the responsibilities, since they do not hold title to the property, but merely the right to use it, at least until the next purge. In either case, the government officials hold the economic, political, and legal power over life or death over the citizens. Needless to say, under either system, the inequalities of income and standard of living are greater than anything possible under a free economy, and a man's position is determined not by his productive ability and achievement, but by political pull and force. Under both systems, sacrifice is invoked as a magic, omnipotent solution in any crisis, and the public good is the altar in which victims are immolated. But there are stylistic differences of emphasis. The socialist communistic axis keeps promising to achieve abundance, material comfort, and security for its victims in some indeterminate future. The fascist Nazi axis scorns material comfort and security and keeps extolling some undefined sort of spiritual duty, service, and conquest. The socialist communist axis offers its victims an alleged social ideal. The fascist Nazi axis offers nothing but loose talk about some unspecified form of racial or national greatness. The socialist communist axis proclaims some grandiose economic plan which keeps receding year by year. The fascist Nazi axis merely extols leadership without purpose, program, or direction, and power for power's sake. Well, the point of all that is to basically show you how similar fascism is with socialism and communism. And how does that matter? Well, we're going to talk about Antifa, and Antifa claims to be anti-fascist. but their methods are anything but that. In fact, their methods are somewhat fascistic. Now, onto that line I was talking about, I would put Antifa in between fascism and communism or socialism, right to the left. They are far from freedom, as you can probably put it, because freedom is totally on the other end of it. So what started this whole concept of talking about Antifa on this podcast, on our Instagram account, I posted a picture that juxtaposed Antifa with the KKK, and there's similarities. And the ones that stand out to me are they both cover their faces. They both will hurt you if you disagree with them. And the KKK was the militant wing of the Democratic Party, and today Antifa stands as the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. You guys have any comment?
I mean, I see the clothing thing for sure, and
black for Antifa and white for KKK.
Well, yeah, but I just the whole covering your faces, and I mean, I guess they wear hoods and stuff too, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. It's anything they do to cover their faces. But to me, that's a cowardly point of it, because they're only doing it to say stop from getting identified so they won't be arrested.
Yeah, they can walk around in daylight and stuff like that. So.
My confusion is why they don't see the same comparison, how they don't see themselves as the KKK. Because they're doing the same thing like you pointed out, and yet they don't see it that way.
Well, I did get into with one person on my Instagram account, or our Instagram account, and he was standing up for Antifa and basically lashing at me for saying I can't compare the two. The difference to him was the KKK would kill, and Antifa, and in his words, would only use bike locks to hurt people.
Like
as
that
if
couldn't kill you.
Yes, but it's a matter of degree. Both are forms of hurting. Killing someone is hurting someone, and using a bike lock is it's still hurting someone, but to a lesser degree. Just last weekend, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, the weekend the 17th, there was a Proud Boy Patriot Prayer rally in Portland. Did you guys see that on the news?
I heard about it. Just cause,
I did not.
Yeah.
Did you see any? So you didn't, but did you see any of the video from it?
No, I didn't see any video.
They were, of course, all clad in black, covering their faces. They were using hammers to hurt people.
Jeez.
They even went after. I wish this was a video podcast so we could show this. But they even went after a man who was dressed like a gladiator. Why, I don't know. But he had a basically red, white, and blue on as well. And he was holding the arm of what looked to be an 8-year-old or 10-year-old girl. And they were attacking the girl as well as him.
Oh, my God.
This is Antifa. There was buses that were trying to escape. This one video showed Antifa members opening up a black case. And inside that black case was nothing but broken up chunks of cement. They took that cement and was throwing it at the buses when they left.
Wow.
Now fascism is basically, I mean, I did give you a long-winded version of what fascism means, but basically it's the government controlling. They want to control everything, want to control private property, what you do on your property, as well as the narrative. Isn't that exactly what Antifa is doing when they do those things? Aren't they trying to control you?
Oh, everything, yeah.
Yeah.
Retaliation, absolutely. Fear.
They're using fear. That's one of their tactics.
And do they want you to be on their side too? Like, obviously, they want you to be a part of
I'm glad you brought that up, because their side basically is, well, what fascism to them is. It's called Nazism. They want to be against Nazis, what they always say. To them, anything to the right of their ideology and anyone they don't agree with is a Nazi. So that's why they encompass Trump, who is not a Nazi by any means. In fact, his daughter married a Jewish person. He has Jewish grandkids.
Yeah.
So there's no way he could be a Nazi without hating his own grandkids.
Yeah.
But just because they mistakenly associate him with being a Nazi, therefore anyone who wears a MAGA hat or who agrees with Trump, is a supporter of Trump, is automatically deemed a Nazi.
Yeah. And it's like one of those things where just because you might follow a certain side that you can't 100% go with doesn't mean that person that believes in, whatever president is for everything that they do, you know what I mean? So
Oh, I totally agree. You can't blanket, just like you can't blanket any group. To say any group is bad, it doesn't matter what we talk about, whether it's ethnic or religious. There are some within that religion. Let's just say Islam.
Yeah.
There are a lot of bad people in Islam, but there are also a lot of good people in Islam. My best friend in high school was raised a Muslim, and his family were good people.
Yeah.
They were not those fundamentalist Islamic people that were out to hurt you if you disagree with them. Just to give you a little nuance, there are people in every group. Antifa doesn't believe that.
Yeah.
If you are not lockstep, agree with them, they will hurt you. And there is where they're fascistic. They want to control what you say. Not only fascistic, they're anti-free speech.
that doesn't make sense.
Well, what is it else if you are for Trump? Let's not even go as far as saying you're a Nazi, but you're for Trump, and they still hate you because they want to shut you up because they are anti-free speech. I mean, the definition of free speech is be able to say what you want, and within reason, even though that the whole trope of can't say fire in a crowded movie house. That has nuances to it too.
Yeah. No,
but
I
however,
understand.
for the most point, you should be able to say what you want. That's not what Antifa believes. Antifa believes that they should that you should either agree with them or be even more left than they are.
Like,
now,
reminds me of like Fight Club or something.
in a way, it is because that's what they do.
Yeah.
But you know, so if you ever look at pictures of course, always behind a mask, but they're always white kids. Mm-hmm. So these white kids are trying to tell you, even black conservatives calling them Nazis. These white, and usually they're in my opinion, they're stuck in mama's basement still. They haven't grown up yet, and they've been babied their entire life, and so they think, and they've been indoctrinated and think anything they disagree with is fascistic.
If you don't agree with them, they have the right to go and do whatever they deem permissible in their eyes to control you.
Bike locks and hurting you. I mean, that just scratches the surface. I mean, they shut down Milo Yiannopoulos in the UC Berkeley, which was, I think, a year ago, just because they disagree with them. And he is a gay conservative married to a black man.
Yeah. And isn't he technically Jewish? I don't know.
I think he is. Yeah. Yes, I think he is too.
I don't know if he practice it, but I think he is.
No, I think you're absolutely right. The point is, everything that the left is supposed to protect is what Milo Yiannopoulos is, yet they hate him. They can't stand him. Yeah. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Well, this whole thing doesn't make sense. The fact I get the free speech thing, and that's where they think they can say what they want to say and hurt you, yell at you, until control you, and that's where it's getting out of line. That they have to end it to where you agree with us or don't agree at all.
Oh, absolutely. You see, in the history goes, they come from a group that fought the German brown shirts in Nazi Germany. They would fight in the streets. This first, in the 1930s, early 30s, this first rendition of Antifa, the anti-fascists, would fight the brown shirts until they were outlawed. But it came back around in the 80s. Basically, they were infiltrating, the Nazis were infiltrating punk rock. And that's where they all started in Europe to fight against the skinheads. You remember skinheads when we were growing up?
Oh, yeah.
They were fighting those skinheads in the punk rock scene. Well, that soon died, and they ran out of opponents. So when it came around, I even have something about Trump. It came after Trump was elected. It came about the reemergence of it after the 80s, and the current manifestation is after the surprise election of Donald Trump. Once again, they automatically think that Trump is a fascist, even though they have no evidence of such a thing. They just automatically believe it.
But by what you said about them being the younger generation living in their basement, it sounds like these kids, they want the equality thing, that they're entitled to whatever they think they want without any work, without any production from them whatsoever. And that whoever they deem to give it to them, that they have to give it to them. So
Yes.
that's where they're getting this whole fascism and kind of relating it to them because they think they're entitled to other people's property, for lack of better words.
In a way, their idealism comes from fighting, because there was no one to fight Nazi Germany, and they got away with almost exterminating the Jews in Europe. So in their idealistic way, because no one was around to stop them at that time, and their rhetoric, the Nazis, that they have a right to stop it now. And the problem is they call it predetermined self-defense, which is a contradiction in terms.
Just say, how do you
You
predetermine
can't
that?
exactly. You cannot pre anything. Comes self-defense by definition is retaliatory.
Yeah.
So, but they're trying to start it in the name of self-defense. It's absolutely
That doesn't make sense
It's
at all.
screwed up logic.
Right, but with the educational system now, people are falling, or the younger generation are falling for it, and some are falling in line and actually getting on board with them because of that reason there.
A lot.
I
More
haven't-
and more.
I even heard one young person in Speedway say, and I couldn't believe it, that communism is great if it's done right.
That's the voice of ignorance.
And this kid was literally just fresh out of college, maybe 1 or 2 years out.
that shows you he was indoctrinated.
Absolutely, it was his
by
schooling.
and we have,
He made it clear, though, if
since
it's done
we're
the
gonna bring
right
that up, he got that from college, and that is the exact epitome of anti-free speech, especially in today's climate, because if you're a conservative, you're not allowed to speak in any college campus. Even liberal comics like Jerry Seinfeld is warning other comics not to go to college campuses because of the atmosphere. It's once again, it proves they don't believe in free speech.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know what's going to happen now with like today, and so many people have gotten just like, shoot out of colleges with just saying the wrong thing. So,
Well, even I forget the one gentleman's name. Staunch right conservative. No. He's the white supremacist, the KKK leader that wanted to come talk at Michigan State.
Was it Spencer?
I forget his name, but he wanted to come to state.
I forget his first. It's either Robert or something Spencer.
They didn't let
It
him
could be
come.
The first name
They,
could be
they
different.
didn't let him speak. Of
course not.
They basically said no. He's not going to come. But yet, these guys are claiming, or they have these similarities, and yet this guy was basically banned from the Michigan State campus from speaking.
Well, since you're going to bring that up, one of the high ironies also of this thing is, like I already said, that KKK was the militant wing of the Democratic Party. You guys remember Senator Robert Byrd? He was, at the time, one of the longest serving senators, congressmen,
Back in the 60s?
and all the way up to the 80s.
Okay.
He was around for obviously one of the
Right.
longest until Dingle took over. He used to be a member of the KKK. You guys know what party he was in?
Democratic, right?
He was a Democrat.
Well, I do remember back in
the left. This is who Antifa fights for. The
Yeah.
Democrats.
I don't remember what year it was, the 50s or 60s, but they had a picture of the Capitol building, and the KKK was there was maybe 1 million of them, and they were a dominant control of the government. They were actually showing some government figures, they were obviously in their whole getup, but they were kind of highlighting that this is that government figure in that line down in D.C. This is back in the 60s, and they're trying to say how heavily influenced the government was by the KKK.
Well, let's go even further back. Do you guys remember a movie called Birth of a Nation?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's about-
I know that.
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
see
That was kind of ridiculed, and when it came out, they didn't go over too well, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're mistaking it for I can't think of his name. The conservative. This was a movie that was back in the 1920s.
Oh, okay,
It was
that's
about
not
the KKK.
Okay.
There was a president that the first place it was ever shown was in the White House by one of the heroes of the Democratic Party, Woodrow Wilson. Once again, the Democrats embraced the KKK, the same people that the current Antifa claims to be fighting.
Yeah, I mean, it was a different time then, So.
Completely
I don't think
different.
That, I
Doesn't
don't
matter.
think that matters because
it's
ethics, it's absolute.
Yeah.
Either it's like slavery was wrong when it was legal,
For sure,
and
yeah.
wrong today. So this was wrong even in that different time. But I get your point.
Yeah.
It was an absolute different time. They were obviously more tolerant of the KKK, especially in the South. I mean, Jim Crow laws, Democrats. I mean, a lot of the problems we've had has been coming from Democrats.
Wasn't Governor Wallace a Democrat, the one who
Yes, he was.
stood in front of the Alabama University door,
Yes, he
not
was.
letting the
Once
education?
again, in the South, Lyndon Johnson, he wasn't pro KKK, but he was praised for signing the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Before he became vice president, they tried to put it through under Eisenhower. Lyndon Johnson was the senior Senate Majority Leader. He stopped it every single time. And they put it multiple times. Refused to do it because he was, what is he? He was from Texas, from the South.
Yeah.
He was so anti-civil rights until it was politically expedient for him. Another definition of pragmatism. The end justifies the means. He would use this to get voters for 40 years, he said. The Democrats will vote us from now, and black people, although he used a whole different word when he said it. But they will vote for us for 40 years because we passed this. He said that right after he signed it. Once again, the Democrats.
So he used it for, like you said, his benefit, and it worked.
One question I have is, now these Antifa, they're not really centrally organized. They're a bunch of small, little, tiny groups, and what allows them to get organized is social media. But I've always wondered, how are they funded? Well, in my research, I found that out. The left-wing billionaire George Soros.
I was just going to say Soros.
Do they have a Patreon?
Yeah. And his ties to Antifa through a group called the Allegiance for Global Justice, AFGT with a small f. Soros Philanthropy, known at the time as the Open Society Institute, was official sponsor for the AFGT, which gave $50,000 to Refuse Fascism, an unincorporated Antifa group. So they're getting their funding from the left, a Democrat, George Soros. So the point is, Antifa is to the left. They claim to be fighting against things that it seems like the Democrat Party were fighting for so long.
Yeah, and call them just in doing it. That's the kind of ironic part. They think they're correct in what they're fighting for when they're totally out of line.
Absolutely. Now, there's one other origin that I want to get to before we close out, at least a modern origin. Do you guys remember Occupy Wall Street?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Another funded by Soros, correct?
Of course. But do you remember a certain group that would go around this? They weren't called Antifa, but they would go around and we'd be breaking windows, setting fires to cars. Do you remember at all?
What just happened in New York City and Chicago?
All of them.
I can't remember the name, but I know I remember the activity, but not the name.
They all wore black. They were called Black Bloc.
Okay.
They covered their faces in black. They wore black. They used violence to get their methods across. Sound familiar?
So why'd they change the name?
Sounds like Antifa.
No, Black Bloc still exists. It does. But
okay.
Antifa took their tactics. I mean, they basically, Antifa, the modern Antifa, the current one, came out of that Occupy Wall Street movement. So it's, once again, this Black Bloc is the same as Antifa. Little tiny groups that would get together in one or two protests or rallies to do ones. I mean, they don't have, it's not what they're for. They're not for anything. They're against so-called fascism or the right.
Are their agendas similar?
Yeah, absolutely. What was Occupy Wall Street? Against capitalism. I mean, Wall Street is the symbol of capitalism.
Yeah.
So that is what they're for. Now, the funny thing is, another irony or contradiction in Antifa is, have you guys have seen pictures of them? Have you seen the flags that they carry around with them?
Yeah, they don't. Do they have like a symbol on them and stuff? I just always felt like
not
they were
the Antifa symbol.
Yeah.
I mean a certain ideological symbol, or in fact, the symbol, the flag I'm talking about is a former state, a former country. The country still exists, but it has a different name now.
Oh, what is that?
It's the communist flag.
Oh, okay.
The hammer and sickle.
I was going to say the hammer and sickle, but
It's the communist Soviet flag.
All right, yeah.
Now here's the contradiction. They claim to be. They want freedom to act as they want. And in fact, some of them call themselves anarchist communists. There's the contradiction because anarchy is no government, and communism is total government.
I don't think they understand what they're saying.
Maybe they think it's like yin and yang.
The indoctrination part comes in with their ignorance.
Well, this just shows how.
Ignorant.
I'll be nice here. Stupid people who support Antifa are because they don't understand the contradictions in their own ideology.
What about that famous saying that they don't know? And they don't know.
They don't know that they don't know. They don't know and they don't know that they don't know.
Correct. I think that's the case here.
Now, just to give, and we can close with this, I wanted to give the pro-Antifas a chance to speak. And this is basically what they say. On the specific issue of violence, Marilyn Mayo, senior fellow researcher for the Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremism, said that the statistics show that radical leftists have been dramatically less likely to kill people than their counterparts on the opposite side of the political spectrum. Over the past decade, extremists of every stripe have killed 372 Americans. 74% of those killings were committed by what they call right-wing extremists. Only 2% of those deaths were at the hands of left-wing extremists.
Is this true?
I say it's BS, because here's why. And this is the final nail in the coffin for them, at least in my eyes. Did you guys know the Dayton shooter that happened in Dayton where he went?
Yeah. I don't know him, but I know of it. Yeah. Right.
He actually was on social media praising the you guys remember the car bombing and fire? Where the guy went with a assault weapon at the ICE compound out in Washington State.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
That guy. First of all, the guy who did that in the Washington State one was a member of Antifa. Number one, the Dayton shooter, I think his last name was Betts, went online praising that ICE shooter and called him a martyr.
How come no one's heard of this?
Well,
I mean, you have, but how come it's not in the mainstream media?
When do you get true news from
What's the
problem?
Well, that's the problem.
That's a huge problem. I mean, I don't agree with Trump on a lot, but when he says fake news, he's right. Because you don't get real news from the mainstream media.
Or too much, and you're like, you can't like retain it. You know, I mean, you get like shoveled over with all the real stuff. And
well, you sent me a text. I think it's a good example. I think a couple of weeks ago. For 8 years, if I didn't agree with the president, I was a racist. And now, if I agree with the president, I'm a racist. So it's just the exact. It's the exact. Yeah, but just what you were saying though. Now, when Trump comes in and you agree with what he's saying, you're even more of a racist, KKK supporter, Nazi. If you wear that MAGA hat, you're called a Nazi just for wearing it. You get dirty looks for wearing
a red
that
hat.
Yeah, and they well, I've seen a couple of people I've had a red hat and they've just looked at it twice to make sure it wasn't a MAGA hat. I'm like, I want to go out and get one I don't want to see defy, but freedom of speech. Why can't I wear that hat?
Yeah.
Especially since it doesn't mean what they think it means.
Correct.
And even worse than that, you can get kicked out of restaurants now.
Yeah, that part's hard to believe, but yeah, it's actually turning that way towards it's become acceptable to where.
I think it's kind of ironic that the left will make you bake a cake for a gay couple, even if you don't agree with them, but they also agree that they can kick you out of a restaurant if you don't agree with them, if you happen to be someone on the right.
Yeah, that doesn't make much sense.
That contradiction that I don't know if they don't understand that.
Because they're not about freedom. They're not.
Well, it's control. Absolutely.
It's about, yes, and it's control. They're with you as long as you're with their ideology. You're against their ideology, they will shut you up. And they say this all the time, by any means necessary.
At all costs, yeah.
That's scary.
Well, to sum up, I don't like Antifa. I see them as evil. I don't see a pro-democracy shred in their ideology. I see it
as a dangerous movement. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it sounds pretty scary.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our first podcast of the Change of Reason podcast. I'm going to leave you with the question: how can anybody be enlightened when truth is so poorly lit?